according to new research, letting your kids try alcohol can lead them to becoming binge drinkers. This is a recent scientific survey. Colin's sighing. So there's always a new survey, isn't there, and another review.
Well, up until this research came out, I grew up, and when my children were little, it was you should never encourage your children to drink at home because they'll grow up as alcoholics because you're giving them the taste for it at an early age. It just baffles me. My kids, when they were underage, never drank, you know, and I'm not a drinker, so it was not a case of we always had wine at home and have a little sip. It was
Did you
never
even do that at Christmas? Let's have a little sip of this or a bit of beer? Or...
I think because they never saw me do it, and, you know, we weren't drinkers at home anyway. But have they grown up and do they drink? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely bladdered every weekend. But they're all, you know, of age and that. And so, yes. So they've never drank, but they still drink now. But I don't know. It just... You just don't know what to do for the best.
Well, there's always another survey, isn't there? But they're saying that, you know, you think it's fine to give them a little bit because everyone's doing it, but actually it sends a very mixed message. And I have to say, growing up, I was of that generation with my parents that ours, it was like we had a little Cinzano and lemonade at Christmas, like this much, or Martini, the red martini, or something, with like this much lemonade. So my parents did a little of that, you know, little bit of this or a little bit of that. Once or twice a year. I definitely didn't grow up to be a binge drinker.
No, you love a drink.
I do like a drink.
When I was little, my mum and dad, because apparently I was a real crier, like cried all the time, and it was just driving everybody insane. So it's kind of a cultural thing where they just put a little bit of rum or whiskey in the milk.
Oh yeah, okay.
They used to.
Did it work?
It did work. It used to knock me out flat. My mum would get a good night's sleep. So I guess that.
Did they ever let you have a drink at a party or anything?
Yeah, I mean, at my first communion, my uncle thought it was funny to kind of put some more alcohol in
Your first communion? So how old?
My first Holy Communion, so I'm 7 or 8 year old, and he decided that it was a good idea to kind of put a little bit more alcohol in my drink. So I ended up tipsy at my first Holy Communion.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, that's my claim to fame. But no, I mean,
but did that lead you to letting your own? I mean, your children are young, aren't they?
Yeah, my children are 7 and 5, and I don't, you know, they don't drink alcohol, and I've never given them a sip or anything like that. And yeah, it didn't make me an alcoholic, for example.
But would you when they're older? Because some people, you know, the theory used to be, oh, you know, the reason that they binge drink is because, you know, we're saying you can't touch alcohol, it's terrible, don't drink it. It makes them want to go out. And so that's why people thought, oh, well, just give them a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and take the mystery away.
Well, in France, they sort of, with a bit of with their food, they have a little bit of wine. But you know, the research, you're right, Colleen, because one minute they say one thing, the next minute another piece of research comes out, contradicts it. But with this research, what I found fascinating was that the people who carried it out said, ideally, alcohol should be initiated when the brain is fully developed, around the age of 25. That is incredible. And, you know, alcohol is an accepted drug in this country,
Well, talking of which, let's move it on to drugs, because I know some of you might have heard this. Jason Donovan had recently said in an interview somewhere, you know, if I thought my children were going to take drugs, and if I knew they were, I would say, do you know what, if you're going to do it and you're determined to do it, why don't you do it here? Under my roof, where I can keep an eye on you and make sure you're safe.
They talk more openly in school now about drugs. It's not just sex education, it's all education now in schools. And they teach them all the horrors of them and all the, you know, if there is good
around
sides
alcohol
of them.
as well.
Exactly.
Many, actually more, in some respects, depending on what drugs we're talking about. But I've learned a lot. I've been educated by my kids' education on drugs to look at it in a different way, not that I condone it. I'd rather they didn't do any of it. You know, if I had my way, they wouldn't drink or do anything. But I am less... like I say, I don't condone it, and I hope they wouldn't do it.
Would you do what Jason Donovan says? Look, if you're going to do it in the comfort of our own home.
It's definitely in our household that if thinking about doing them, or whatever they're thinking about doing it, let's sit down and talk about it. I don't want to go, don't let me catch you doing drugs, because I think that's the quickest way to make them go, oh, I'm going to do it, because that makes it more...
But I'm like Sarah, I'm very ill-informed about drugs. So, you know, the alcohol thing, I think, I'm across this. I know what I did when I was young. You know, I keep an eye, I'd recognise any signs. I'm not sure I would with drugs.
I mean, Kira, when she goes out, she was saying either everyone's on them or they're always offered drugs when they go out. In fact, she went to a festival recently and somebody came up and was handing pills out and she said, no, thank you, I'm not, you know, I'm not into that. And they said, oh, go on, you'll really like them. And she said, no, I don't want them. And this girl, it was, actually turned around and went, oh, trying to make her feel like,
bad,
oh, aren't you a baby?
Yeah.
She just went back to her.
That's the problem, isn't it? Then there's peer pressure, because then there's a certain... I mean, Kira's a very strong personality, but another young person, teenager, would go, oh, I'm not fitting in now, they think I'm boring,
they think I'm a kid.
I should join in, I think I'm a kid. But then, it's funny what you were saying earlier, I don't really think like that about alcohol. You probably should think like that as well.
Well, Kira's worst thing when she's out,
she's
been out with and seen people on drugs and, you know, whatever. But she said the scariest time for her when she's out is when they're drunk. Because she said, then I see the fights. Or I see them injure themselves, or I see them trying to get in cars. And she said, I can't... It's much scarier to be out with somebody who's so off their face on alcohol.
But that's the difference, isn't it, between drugs and alcohol? Someone can take drugs and you don't necessarily know that they're under the influence. But alcohol's quite obvious. There's staggering, there's slurred speech and all the rest of it. Whereas I think that's what's dangerous about drugs, is that some people can live quite a normal life and bubble along without you even knowing that they're taking or using.